I'm remarrying a 23-year-old wealthy man's daughter. Get the hell out of here. You on welfare. Just 3 days after we separated, I met Greg. Next to him stood a young, beautiful woman. She entwined her arm with Greg's and seemed wary of me. However, I recognized her. Have we met somewhere before? Or am I mistaken? While Greg hurled harsh words at me, I desperately tried to recall who this woman was. Then it hit me. Could it be? I remembered how I first came to know this woman and her true identity. At the same time, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Hey, what are you laughing at? It's creepy. Sorry, it's just because this woman is that person. My name is Ashley Morris. I'm 32 and single. I've been working as a nursery school teacher, which has been my dream since I was a student. There are tough aspects like pressure from my boss and dealing with parents, but I'm healed every day by the children's smiles as I work hard. Above all, I've always admired nursery school teachers. I can't quit easily. My workplace might change, but I plan to continue as a nursery teacher until retirement. That's what I thought. However, life doesn't always go as planned. One day, at a mixer invited by a friend, I met a man 3 years my senior, Greg. He seems to be an executive at a well-known company around here. He achieved good results and became an executive in his 20s. I guess that's what they call an elite. However, far from bragging about his career, he was a very humble man. Wow, an executive in your 20s? That's amazing. Not really. There were quite a few others besides me. Still, it's impressive to the outside world. Greg and I happened to sit next to each other, and we hit it off as if we weren't strangers. We exchanged contact information and started meeting. After a few dates, our relationship developed. After 3 years of dating, we got married. Greg was very kind to me even while we were dating. He would plan our dates and give me wonderful gifts, not only on special days. Thank you, Greg. I just want to see Ashley happy. He would come up with such cheesy lines, and I was thrilled. I felt fortunate to have met such a wonderful person. However, at that time, I didn't yet know Greg's true nature. After getting married, my life changed dramatically. It began when Greg told me to quit being a nursery school teacher. Why? I intended to continue working even after getting married. Greg had agreed to that. Please. My mom also said it would be better that way. Your mother has nothing to do with our lives, right? She does, doesn't she? Mom said she would support our lives. Why do you want to work so much? You can live on my income alone. I'm not denying that. Indeed, we could live on Greg's income alone, but I was reluctant to quit being a nursery school teacher. After discussing it, I relented. In fact, we had discussed wanting children in the future, and we concluded that it would be more reassuring to have me at home to start a family. It seems that my mother-in-law had suggested the same, and I reluctantly decided to quit my job. After quitting, at Greg's request, we moved close to his parents' home. According to Greg, it would be easier to receive support if our houses were close. It's at least better than living together. That's what I thought, and I accepted the move. I regretted not discussing our married life while we were dating, but that's a secret. If my mother-in-law had a good personality, I would have gladly accepted it. However, her character was far from good. She looked down on me and scrutinized me with judging eyes. I just couldn't accept that. But once Greg and I started living together, I hoped the chances of meeting my mother-in-law would decrease. That was a big misunderstanding. In fact, since we moved close by, my mother-in-law started coming to our house daily. My father-in-law had already passed away, and perhaps she disliked being alone at home. "Excuse me, Ashley. What is this frozen food packaging doing here?" Every time she visited, my mother-in-law would thoroughly check every corner of the house, even peeking into the trash can. "Hey, not there too. You're not letting my son eat lunches filled with frozen food, are you?" "I do use some frozen food, but not for everything. As a housewife, shouldn't you be making every lunch from scratch? Are you planning to feed our future children frozen food too?" Ah, I can't believe I have such an unimaginable daughter-in-law. I'm sorry. Should a housewife not use frozen food? Certainly, I had chosen the path of a full-time housewife. However, it wasn't something I had desired myself. After my mother-in-law had her say and left our house satisfied. Sigh. All I could do was sigh. Day after day, my mother-in-law would come to the house, complain, and leave. There were even times when she came while I was out and told me off. "Where are you? I came all this way, so hurry up and let me in the houses." She seemed to enjoy tormenting me and used it as a way to relieve her stress. Although I had refused before, getting told off every time was exhausting. Eventually, I became cautious even when going to the nearby convenience store. However, my mother-in-law continuously repeated one particular phrase. "When will you have children?" She pressured me every time we met. "We still can't have them." "What? Are you kidding me? You're infertile, aren't you?" Such tactless remarks were typical of her. As far as my mother-in-law was concerned, the inability to have children was all my fault. Greg was definitely not to blame. However, Greg himself was kind to me. He seemed to think that pregnancy was something we should work on as a couple, and he often cared about my health. "Don't rush with the kids. Sure, I want to give Mom a grandchild, but you're more important to me. Right?" "Right. Thank you." I thought that if we worked together as a couple, we would eventually be blessed with children. However, my hopes never reached fruition. 2 years later, we still hadn't had any children. At that time, my mother-in-law seemed to have given up on having grandchildren and stopped visiting our houses. At the same time, Greg's attitude towards me worsened, and he began to verbally abuse me casually. Perhaps it was the stress of not being able to have children, or maybe he just grew to dislike me. The more I thought about it, the darker my thoughts became. But Greg didn't seem to care about how I felt. "Hey, the food. Why isn't it ready yet?" "Ah, sorry. It'll be ready soon." Ugh, really useless. Can't even cook, can't clean, can't get pregnant. Mom was disgusted. "Why did I even marry someone like you?" Sorry. I no longer had the energy to fight back, and I just kept apologizing to Greg. Seeing me like this, Greg became even more abusive. He would complain about the food being bad, the cleaning not being thorough. I could even get yelled at for a single strand of hair being out of place. And after hurling abuse at me, he would always say, "That's why you can't get pregnant." I was careful about my diet and health management. I took my temperature, managed my menstrual cycle, and was more cautious than when we first got married. But still, I didn't become pregnant. Initially, it was Greg who refused. I understood he was busy or tired from work. But if he was going to complain about not having children, shouldn't he be cooperating? If you're going to say that, then help out. This isn't something I can handle alone. Ugh, shut up. Haven't I told you I'm tired? No matter how I tried to reason with him, Greg would only say he was tired and showed no signs of willingness to cooperate. If Greg wasn't going to help, there was nothing I could do. Whenever I had a moment to myself, I would wonder how things had come to this. Was this the married life I had envisioned? I vaguely thought that our relationship, which had completely cooled, might never return to how it was before. 6 months later, our relationship had cooled even further. Eventually, Greg stopped coming home altogether. He claimed it was due to sudden overtime or drinking parties. He said he had work on holidays too, so he spent very little time at home. I figured he must have given up on me and was probably cheating. If only he would just say he wanted a divorce. In the end, I had no choice but to live a lonely life at home by myself. Greg occasionally came home, but he continued to spew verbal abuse at me. "Why do you always look so miserable? It's disgusting." Sorry. Where had the Greg I married gone? The Greg from those days wasn't someone who would call people disgusting. All I could do was apologize, trying not to upset him further. However, one day, after finishing shopping for dinner and returning home, Greg was there unusually. "Oh, what's up?" "Ah, Ashley. Finally back, huh?" Greg spoke cheerfully. What was he planning? I braced myself and waited for his words when he suddenly handed me a piece of paper. It was a divorce paper. Huh, a divorce. Yeah, I don't need you anymore. There's no point in us being married. Go ahead, become homeless, or get on welfare. So, that's how it is. Alongside the sadness of being clearly told I was no longer needed, I felt a sense of relief that I could finally escape this life. I understand. I accepted the divorce without hesitation. Perhaps because I accepted it so quickly, Greg seemed slightly surprised. I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Greg. At that moment, I felt like I was released from everything and let out a big sigh. Greg told me to get out by the next day, so I went back to my room and packed the essentials. The next day, while Greg was at work, I left the houses and headed to my parents' houses. I had contacted my parents, but they seemed worried now that I was actually coming home. "You can stay at home as long as you need. There's no rush." Encouraged by my mother's words, I decided to face tomorrow with renewed effort. 3 days after the divorce, my heart was still healing, but I knew I had to move forward. I needed to find a job, so I looked through magazines and online for job listings. Perhaps due to labor shortages, there were many openings for nursery school teachers. Maybe I should become a nursery teacher again. I saved a few listings that caught my interest. Looking at the clock, it was past 4 p.m. I had been looking at listings for an hour. I decided to go outside for a change of pace. I didn't have any particular errand, I just wanted to take a walk. I reminisced about walking this path to school or working as a part-timer at this grocery store. However, just as I was about to head home after wandering around for about 30 minutes, I saw a familiar figure. Greg? What? Ashley. In front of me stood Greg, and next to him was an unfamiliar woman, much younger and more beautiful than either Greg or me. The woman intertwined her arm with Greg's and looked at me warily. Why are you here? That's my line. Why are you here? Shut up. It's none of your business. Greg did not want to answer my question. Hey, Greg, who is this woman? Oh, she's my ex-wife. Don't worry about her, Vanessa. Ex-wife? The woman, referred to as Vanessa, was acting flirtatiously, though it only made her seem more like a bimbo. Yet, I felt another emotion upon seeing Vanessa. She seemed familiar. Had we ever met before? Who is she? My current wife. Mom introduced us. What? Wife? That's right. Just 3 days after our divorce, and he's already remarried. My mind went blank. To add insult to injury, Vanessa revealed a shocking fact. We're going to have a baby in a few months. A baby? Considering the size of Vanessa's belly, she seemed to have been pregnant for more than half a year. That time frame overlaps with when Greg stopped coming home. Had they been connected since then? Anyway, Greg looked at Vanessa's face and once again forced reality upon me. I'm remarrying a 23-year-old wealthy man's daughter. Get the hell out of here, you on welfare. Greg said this and burst into a dirty laugh, which Vanessa joined with a high-pitched giggle. That's not. I'm not on welfare. Shut up. Stop pretending. Then Greg and Vanessa burst into laughter again. I felt miserable and was about to cry. However, as I glanced at Vanessa's face, I realized something. The déjà vu I had been feeling since earlier, and the fact that Vanessa was a wealthy man's daughter. Everything connected. At the same time, my tears receded and laughter welled up inside me. Ha ha. My sudden laughter made them step back a bit. Why is she laughing? Gross. Can't handle this. Shall we go? Disgusted by me, the two of them quickly left the scene. The reason I laughed at Vanessa was that I knew her real identity. Indeed, Vanessa is a wealthy man's daughter. However, it's not a successful wealth. In fact, her parents' company, which they managed, was on the brink of bankruptcy. A little while ago, when I was reading job sites and magazines, Vanessa was introduced as a wealthy man's daughter with a photo. It's rare for a wealthy family to introduce their daughter like that, which is why it's stuck in my memory. When I later researched the company owned by the wealthy family, various bulletin boards and review sites mentioned it was close to bankruptcy, and indeed, it seemed to be in quite precarious management. Bankruptcy seemed imminent. It was that much of a troubled company. Maybe this could work. Seeing Greg happy, and the fact that his mother introduced Vanessa, watching all this, something inside me crumbled. I was determined to teach them a lesson with my own hands. They might be happy now, but I'll definitely plunge them into the depths of misery. The first thing I did to bring them down was to offer them a direct apology. A few days after meeting Greg again, I contacted Greg, apologized for laughing, and expressed my desire to give them a baby shower gift. Initially cautious, Greg accepted my request once he saw I was remorseful. However, this was merely a part of my strategy. I wanted to claim damages from Greg and Vanessa through a lawyer, but I had no solid evidence. So, pretending to be remorseful, I called them out to let them spill everything about how they met and the baby, recording everything to submit to the lawyer. A week later, I was at a cafe near my parents' home. Greg and Vanessa arrived about 10 minutes past our meeting time. Sorry. They sat down in front of me without any remorse, still arm in arm, flaunting their affection. Sorry for calling you out suddenly. I was thinking about how rude I was last time we met. I wanted to apologize. Also, isn't your child due soon? I was wondering if I could give you a baby shower gift. Really? Wow, you're so thoughtful. Greg and Vanessa were elated, unaware of everything. By the way, you met through your mother, right? I'd love to hear more about it. As I said this, I discreetly started recording with my smartphone. You want to know? Can't help it then? Greg began talking eagerly, with Vanessa looking at him adoringly. To anyone else, it might seem like a sweet couple's story, but it was far from that. That time was really tough, huh? Yeah, but I'm happy to be with Greg now. Vanessa clung to Greg, who relaxed his expression. Honestly, it was nauseating seeing Greg dote on a younger woman. The two of them fell right into my trap, telling each other how much they loved one another. Of course, I was recording everything. This should definitely serve as solid evidence. Isn't it great to remarry someone younger? Of course. I'm truly happy every day. Right, Vanessa? Yeah. So happy. Their lovey-dovey talk lasted over an hour. It was hard to keep smiling and nodding, but the more comfortably they talked, the more advantageous it was for me. 3 hours later, we all went our separate ways. I went home and replayed the recordings. Everything was recorded clearly. I then contacted the law firm I had in mind. After a day's activities, I flopped onto my bed. Greg and Vanessa's happy faces wouldn't leave my mind. It seemed he was happier with her than when he was with me. When did he start to dislike me? Sigh. Before our marriage, I only saw the good sides of Greg, and now I was painfully aware of it. 2 weeks later, I called them to a nearby station, saying I wanted them to see the actual baby gift. They arrived about 10 minutes late, arm in arm as usual. Putting so much effort into seeing the actual gift, huh? You seemed so sad before, but you're actually celebrating for us. Yeah, so happy. Happy indeed. They were as close as ever, but their happiness would only last until this moment. Shall we go? I led them to a taxi. Our destination was the law office. Unaware of anything, they continued to flirt in the taxi, impressively unconcerned about public eyes. A few minutes later, the taxi arrived at the law office. The blissfully unaware couple followed me without any suspicion, but Greg realized something was amiss as we entered. Hey, what's this place? He shouted, but it was too late. Guided by the receptionist, They were led into a conference room. Were you tricking us? What do you mean? The two of them were yelling loudly, but the lawyer present calmed them down. Did you really think I was going to give you a baby shower gift? Thanks for coming all this way. What? As the two flustered people sat down, the lawyer explained what was happening and why I had taken such actions. Really, you're the worst. What's with this person? We're already divorced, right? We don't have anything to do with compensation. I am going to sue you for the abuses of me, especially under your cheating. You can still claim such compensation after a divorce, you know? All the lovey-dovey talk you happily shared at the cafe has been recorded and submitted, and the fact of your affair hasn't changed. You. Greg sighed deeply and leaned back in his chair, but he sat up quickly when the lawyer mentioned the amount of compensation being demanded. $15,000? That's impossible. I can't pay that either. What? Can't pay? Why don't you ask her parents? Vanessa made a displeased face at my words. I pressed further, knowing her situation. Oh, but that might be difficult. Her parents' company is about to go bankrupt, isn't it? So no funds, huh? Bankrupt? What do you mean? The company was doing well. Greg, who hadn't been informed, widened his eyes and looked at Vanessa, realizing she couldn't escape the truth any longer. Vanessa suddenly changed her demeanor and began to talk. Ah, so it's all come out. Then no need to hide it. Yes, my parents' company is on the brink of bankruptcy. Ever since I met this old man, the business has been failing. So I thought I'd milk him for all he's worth and then leave. I never expected to get pregnant. You, calling me an old man. What? You just realized? I never wanted to marry someone like you in the first place. But since I got pregnant, I had no choice. Really, you're the worst. I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce as soon as possible. With that, Vanessa burst into high laughter. She seemed like a completely different person. Naturally, Greg was shocked by Vanessa's demeanor. So you've been thinking that about me. I'm tired of acting. Now that it's come to this, I'm leaving you. I can't stand living with an old man like you. Vanessa, the couple, who had seemed so happy up until a moment ago, broke down so easily. While I hadn't known exactly how Vanessa felt about Greg, since I orchestrated this meeting, I was satisfied with the outcome. Eventually, Greg agreed to pay the compensation in a lump sum. I worried Greg might try to escape his obligations as his payment was delayed. However, a month later, that worry was resolved when Greg called me. As soon as I answered, he pleaded, "Help me." It turned out that his affair had been discovered at his company, making it difficult for him to stay, and he chose to resign. He had spent most of his savings on Vanessa, and now, broke and divorced, he had no one to turn to. Hey, can we get back together? I don't have money for the compensation. Vanessa left me for another man, and I heard her company went bankrupt. I don't know what to do. Despite his almost tearful call, I had no intention of getting back together. Get back together? Don't make me laugh. Your problems with that woman running away or not having money are none of my concern. If you hadn't done anything strange, none of this would have happened. Just take responsibility. After I sharply responded, Greg hung up without another word. The next day, whether he borrowed money or not, the full amount I demanded was transferred into my account. I didn't hear from Greg again after that. I'm now living at home and have started working as a nursery school teacher again. Indeed, the smiles of the children are bright. The work environment is better than before, and I enjoy my job every day. Getting divorced from Greg was the right decision. I have no plans to marry again anytime soon. Just like I thought years ago, I hope to continue being a nursery teacher until retirement, taking care of my health and living well.
Wait a minute. What are you planning to do? My husband smirked as he pushed my wheelchair toward the cliff and kicked it forcefully into the sea. Shocked, I raised my voice. What are you doing? Ah, there goes your wheelchair, huh? But you were the one who. Listen, crawl back if you have to. You still have housework waiting for you. How could you? With both of my legs broken, the wheelchair was my lifeline. Now that it's gone, I can't even move. What am I supposed to do now? I can't even get to the road. There are no buses running around here. It'll be dark soon. Even if I crawl, I won't get far. What should I do? This is impossible. Just when I felt my spirit about to break, an unexpected event gave me a glimmer of hope. My name is Janet Anderson, 29 years old. After graduating from college, I once worked for a major corporation but resigned after getting married. Since then, I've been living an ordinary life as a housewife. It's been 2 years since I married Matt. I quit my job because of a remark he made. Once we're married, I'd like you to quit your job and take care of the housework. Wait, are you saying you want me to be a stay-at-home wife? Yeah. I can handle the income. Besides, I want to build a home where dinner is ready when I come back. But I can keep working and still do that much. No, you might lose focus because of the job, right? Just doing housework might be easier for you mentally. Well, that's true. Matt works for a company run by his father, Dan. He's young and already in a position to become the next president. He earns twice as much as I do, and that will only increase in the future. Even if we have children, his income will be enough. Maybe there's no need for me to keep working. I didn't hate my job, but it wasn't a career I had to pursue. So, I wanted to build the ideal home he envisioned. I agreed to his request to quit my job. I decided to become a full-time housewife, retire after marriage. Marrying the person I love. Living a relaxed married life doing housework. Could I be any luckier? That's how I felt as we registered our marriage and became husband and wife. But at some point, this newlywed life began to feel torturous. It all started with a trivial thing. About 3 months after we got married, I wasn't feeling well one day and served pre-purchased frozen meals for dinner. Seeing this, my husband immediately started yelling at me. Hey! What is this? What do you mean? This dinner. You didn't make this, did you? No. I wasn't feeling great today, so I went with frozen side dishes. Right after I explained, my husband threw the dishes into the trash can. I panicked, unable to find the words. What? What did you just do? Threw away the dinner side dishes. And the plates too. This must be a joke, right? Matt was breathing heavily, and he seemed a bit different. I had a hard time figuring out what to say. Matt. Why would you do something like this? Huh? It's because a housewife like you relies on frozen meals that are already prepared. Are you trying to make fun of me, or what? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry it ended up being ready-made. But I was feeling sick and couldn't cook anything elaborate. Shut up. Do you think you prepared dinner like this? All you did was line up ready-made side dishes. Don't act like you've accomplished something. I'm sorry. Trembling in immense fear, I had never seen him so furious. Did I do something wrong? Sure, one of the side dishes was pre-made, but I had cooked rice, made soup, and even served some prepared sides. Why would he get so angry over just one frozen dish? I had for what? To get ready to go out. We're going back to my parents' home, so get ready. Your parents' place. Wait, I haven't heard anything about this. Shut up. You just do as I say. Instead of making lousy meals, hurry up and get ready. All right. Once it's come to this, arguing back would only fuel his anger. I quickly took off my apron and started getting ready. I managed to prepare in just 20 minutes. But my husband's mood had worsened from before. All the way to his parents' house by car, he kept grumbling. Several hours later, when we arrived at his parents' house, they greeted us kindly. At home, Matt acts like a good son and husband, so I feel more at ease. While sipping coffee his mother, Susan, made, and having light conversations, Dan turned to me. Janet, are you having any trouble with our son? I just wondered if he's taken you on any trips. We love the sea and the mountains and always go driving every few months. Oh, is that so? I'm sure your wife must be thrilled. Well, I hope so. Lately, she's been sleeping in the passenger seat most of the time. Which is a bit lonely. Hee hee. Your wife is busy every day, isn't she? As we were having this conversation, I noticed my husband glaring at me sharply, as if warning me not to say anything unnecessary. I had no intention of exposing my husband's true nature to his parents. The verbal abuse and heartless acts I endure are known only to me. Without solid evidence, I couldn't possibly tell his parents. Even if they believed me, my husband would deny it. If his parents intervened, I would face terrible retaliation afterwards. The best strategy was to maintain the status quo. I just had to keep playing the good wife in front of his parents, as instructed. Repeating this to myself, I somehow managed to get through each day. A week later, tragedy struck. On the way back from shopping for dinner ingredients at the supermarket, I was hit by a car that ran a red light, breaking both my legs severely. I was taken to the hospital, and although they must have contacted my husband, he never came to visit. Since he didn't show up even once until my discharge, I had to buy all necessary items at the hospital shop. Moving in a wheelchair, especially because I had to operate it myself, was more physically draining than it looked. The hospital was large, and getting to the shop was a struggle. On the day of my discharge, there was no word from my husband, and I had to go home alone. When I arrived, he was already drinking beer with snacks, even though it was still midday. Finally back, huh? His mocking, slightly drunk demeanor infuriated me, and I couldn't help but yell. Hey, isn't this too much? I was in an accident. Yeah, so what? You didn't die, right? I heard that much, and that's why I didn't bother visiting the hospital. Normally, if a family member has an accident, you'd rush to be with them. Do you have any idea how I felt these past 3 weeks? So what? Just so you know, I had to do all the housework by myself for 3 weeks because there was no maid. Maid. My husband clearly said that to me, not wife, but maid. Tears of anger and sadness blurred my vision. I headed to the bedroom and, because I cried myself to sleep last night, I woke up with a splitting headache. Lying in bed, unwilling to do anything, the bedroom door opened, and my husband spoke. How about we go for a drive to clear your head? A drive? You remember what I talked about with my dad, right? Going for regular drives and such. Oh, yeah. But why all of a sudden? No, I thought you must be tired from the hospital stay. It's just for some fresh air. I never thought my husband would suggest something like that. I was so shocked that I couldn't come up with the right response. It honestly made me feel great that he understood my feelings. Yeah, let's go. Then wait for me and get ready. Okay. I had gotten used to operating the wheelchair. But dressing was still a struggle since I couldn't move my legs. Separates were too difficult to manage, so I chose a dress that I could wear in one piece. My husband pushed the wheelchair from our house to the car. Had he reconsidered his thoughts after I yelled at him yesterday? His casual kindness warmed my heart. Maybe Matt had reconsidered. Could it be that our marriage was heading in a good direction? Although the accident was hard, if I could live happily with Matt from now on. It's useless to always think negatively. I decided to fully enjoy the drive with my husband. A few hours later, we've arrived. My husband parked the car and took the wheelchair out of the trunk. We had arrived at a high cliff along the coast. A vast ocean spread out before us. Wow! It's so beautiful. Right? I got to know about this place from my dad. This is amazing, thank you, Matt. After expressing my gratitude again, my husband smiled gently. But the next moment, he grabbed the wheelchair roughly and started heading towards the cliff. Unable to move, I screamed from the passenger seat. Wait a minute. What are you planning to do? My husband smirked as he pushed the wheelchair to the cliff and kicked it forcefully towards the sea. Shocked, I raised my voice. What are you doing? Ah, there goes your wheelchair, huh? But, you were the one who. Too bad, right? Your legs are gone now. That's terrible. Why would you do such a thing? As I cried out, my husband looked annoyed and dismissively said, You really thought I brought you here out of the goodness of my heart? What do you mean? You messed up because you weren't paying attention and avoided chores for 3 weeks. It's totally fair that you get punished, don't you think? I wasn't paying attention. It was the other driver who ran the red light. And I didn't exactly skip on the housework. Shut up. Don't talk back so much. Listen, crawl back if you have to. You still have housework waiting for you. How could you? My husband dragged me out of the car and left me there. Then he got into the driver's seat and started the engine. Please, Matt. Wait. No matter how much I screamed, my husband just smirked and looked at me. My pleas were in vain, and he drove back the way we came. With both legs broken. The wheelchair was my lifeline. Now that it's gone, I can't even move. What am I supposed to do now? I can't even reach the road. There are no buses running around here. It'll be dark soon. Even if I crawl, I won't get far. What should I do? This is impossible. Tears streamed down my face, and I bit my lip hard, tasting a hint of blood. My miserable situation and my husband's heartless words fueled my anger. This is ridiculous. How much more can someone belittle me? At this rate, just when I felt like breaking down, a car stopped right in front of me. Janet? Is that you, Janet? A man hurried towards me, surprised. It was none other than Dan. Dan. Why are you here? That should be my line. What are you doing here, Janet? And your legs. Ah. I broke my bones in an accident. Matt was here just before. Did he leave you here alone? I knew I shouldn't tell the truth. But feeling desperate, I unconsciously nodded. Following behind, Dan and Susan came rushing over with a blanket. She draped it over my shoulders and asked urgently, Janet, are you okay? Susan. We were visiting relatives nearby. This is our favorite spot by the sea. We always stop here on our way back. Then we happened to see you. Is that so? The fact that my husband had heard about this place from his parents had ironically worked out. I never imagined they would find me here. What happened? Tell us everything. Tears spilled over as Dan gazed at me directly. I decided to tell everything about the past 2 years. The truth is, my in-laws listened silently until I finished. Midway through, Susan cried and hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry. Our son has put you through so much. Please don't apologize, Susan. I'm also to blame. There's no way you are to blame. You are our precious daughter-in-law. We can't let this go on. Susan. Thank you. Afterward, my in-laws put me in the car and we headed to a nearby soba restaurant. After eating, the 3 of us returned home. Dan led the way and rang the intercom. Not expecting me to return so soon, my husband casually opened the door. With a yes. Seeing us, his eyes widened in shock. What? Why? Hearing his whisper, Dan shouted angrily. What have you done to our precious daughter-in-law? Precious daughter-in-law? Am I not your precious son? What? Don't talk nonsense. You're no longer a son or anything else to me. A person who doesn't treat others right isn't fit to follow in my footsteps. Hey. You're joking, right? Are you serious? You're fired. Disowned. Don't ever show your face to us again. No way. Dan gently told me, gather your things. Susan helped me pack my suitcase. And we left the house. As we got into the car, my husband, with a tear-streaked face, rushed towards us, pleading, Forgive me. But it was too late for forgiveness. Perhaps there was never any love between us to begin with. I realized that. Glaring at my husband, I coldly said, Enough. How could I easily forgive you after what you've done? I can no longer trust or continue to love you. Never interfere in my life again. At those words, my husband collapsed powerlessly. We drove to my in-laws' home, where I decided to stay until my legs fully healed. 3 months later, I was able to move as before and started working at Dan's company. Naturally, I divorced my husband. Having been fired, he is now struggling to find re-employment and is getting by with day jobs. Following Dan's advice, we're now seeking payment from Matt through a lawyer. My in-laws will testify about being abandoned. So it's only a matter of time before he faces consequences. Even though I picked the wrong man to marry, it introduced me to some wonderful in-laws. I plan to cherish this relationship and repay their kindness by working at Dan's company.
Tyler, why are you throwing out my clothes? Those are my favorites, I exclaimed, voice sharp as I watched him toss my beloved denim jacket into a box marked Donate. Tyler glanced up, a smirk curling his lips. Jenna, you don't need so many things. I'm decluttering for both of us. Trust me, you'll thank me later. I stood there, stunned. My husband of 10 years had never behaved like this before. We lived a pretty average life in our suburban home. I worked as a graphic designer. Tyler had a stable job in IT. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was comfortable. But standing in our cluttered bedroom, which Tyler was transforming into a museum of minimalism, I felt anything but comfortable. You're kidding, right? I asked, hoping to see a glimmer of a joke in his eyes. But he was dead serious. No, Jenna, it's time for a change. We have too much unnecessary stuff. It's suffocating. Suffocating? Are you listening to yourself? Those are my belongings. You can't just throw them away. My voice wavered between anger and disbelief. Tyler shrugged, continuing to sort through my things. I've been reading about minimalism. It's supposed to clear our minds, reduce stress. Whose mind? Your mind? I need my things, Tyler. I use them. I tried to pull my jacket from the pile, but he held it firmly. Relax, Jenna. You'll see. This is for the best. Infuriated, I walked out of the bedroom and into my office. I needed space away from his crazy new obsession. As I sat at my desk, I stared at my computer, trying to work, but my thoughts blazed with anger. What had gotten into him? Tyler's sudden interest in minimalism clashed with everything about our daily life. I loved our cozy, cluttered home filled with memories, the trinkets from our travels, the art supplies scattered around, the bookshelf overflowing with stories. It was part of who I was. That night, lying in bed, I turned to Tyler. I don't appreciate you making these decisions without me. We need to respect each other's things. He turned to face me, that infuriating smirk replaced by determination. You'll see, Jenna. Soon you'll understand. I turned away, pulling the covers tightly around me, seething quietly. If he thought I was just going to sit by and watch him discard my life, he was mistaken. The next morning, I found more of my things gone. The books I'd been reading, my favorite coffee mug from college, even the houseplants I loved tending had vanished. I wandered through our home that was rapidly becoming a sterile, soulless space. Confronting Tyler in the living room, I struggled to keep my voice calm. Tyler, we've got to talk. This has to stop. He put down his minimalist guide and met my gaze. Jenna, in time you'll appreciate this. It's for our mental clarity. Was he kidding? Mental clarity? I felt on the edge of snapping. This isn't about clarity. It's about control, Tyler. Stop treating me like I don't matter. His eyes flared, but he didn't reply. The silence stretched, thick with tension. As the days went by, the house grew emptier, and my anger grew. Tyler's dismissive attitude only added fuel to the fire gnawing at my patience. Something had to give, but for now I felt cornered, constantly grappling with the loss and the turmoil he brought into our once contented home. The struggle for control loomed large, and I knew I had to find a way to reclaim my space, my peace, and my sanity. But how? I woke up with a sense of unease, knowing I had an important project deadline. As I reached for my tablet and stylus, my heart sank. They were gone. Frantically, I searched around my office, the drawer, the desk, even the bookshelf. Nothing. Tyler, I screamed, storming into the kitchen where he sat sipping his morning coffee. He looked up with that same smirk. Morning, Jenna, what's the panic? My work tools, my tablet, my stylus, my sketch pad, where are they? I demanded, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. He leaned back, looking entirely too pleased with himself. I hid them. You need to focus on real life, not on screens. Are you out of your mind? I shouted, anger making my words sharp. I need those for my job, Tyler. This isn't some hobby. It's how I pay the bills. He shrugged nonchalantly. You're too dependent on these things. I did this for your own good. My fists clenched. For my own good? You're sabotaging my work. Give them back now. Not until you calm down and realize I'm right, he said, standing up and crossing his arms. Desperation clawed at my insides. I didn't have time for this. My deadline was looming, and every minute without my tools was another nail in the coffin of my professional reputation. "Where did you put them?" I asked, my voice breaking. "There are more important things than your deadlines, Jenna. Trust me, this is tough love," he said, making me feel like a child being scolded. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my car keys and left the house, driving aimlessly just to clear my head. I ended up at a coffee shop, trying to figure out how to salvage my project. But without my tools, I was helpless. Hours passed, and I knew I'd never make the deadline. My client's messages went from concerned to irate. Back home, Tyler sat watching TV, unbothered by the chaos he'd caused. "Are you ready to admit you're too consumed by technology?" he asked when I walked in. "I missed my deadline," I said flatly, my voice hollow. "Maybe it's a wake-up call," he replied, eyes still glued to the screen. "Tyler, you cost me a major project. I could lose my job over this," I said, fighting back tears. He finally looked at me. "You're overreacting. One project isn't going to end your career. It's all part of the process of simplifying our lives." I couldn't believe his arrogance. "You just don't get it, do you?" I felt a wave of hopelessness crash over me. Days later, the fallout from missing that deadline hit. I received an email from my boss, expressing severe disappointment and hinting that my future projects would be closely scrutinized. My career, something I'd worked so hard to build, was now hanging by a thread, all because of Tyler's absurd obsession. I cornered Tyler as he was sorting through another box of my belongings. "This stops now, Tyler. If you touch anything else, we're done." He laughed, not taking me seriously. "You love me too much to leave, Jenna." Rage and despair mingled inside me. "We'll see," I whispered, more to myself than to him. The days that followed were tense. Tyler continued his minimalist crusade, ignoring my warnings. Our home, once filled with my creative energy, now felt like a battleground. The man I married was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. And as much as I hated the thought, I knew I had to fight back. But how? Margaret's advice replayed in my mind. Maybe it was time for a new strategy. I woke up to another day in our increasingly empty house. As I went to grab breakfast, I noticed my favorite coffee mug was gone. Again. "Tyler," I called out, but he was nowhere to be found. Instead, piles of items marked for donation cluttered the living room. Books, frames, even my art supplies. "Tyler, you better not have touched my things again," I yelled, my voice echoing through the silent house. Entering my office, the sinking feeling hit me before I fully saw the damage. My art supplies, the brushes, the paints, the canvases, gone. Just a blank, sterile space where creativity used to live. Panic and fury swept over me. Tyler walked in with a smug look. "Morning, Jenna. You seem tense." "You've gone too far this time," I said, my voice shaking. "Where are my art supplies?" "Gone. You're better off without them," he said calmly, as if discussing the weather. I stormed towards him, my anger boiling over. "You had no right. Those were important to me. They were irreplaceable." "You need to let go," he said, his tone devoid of empathy. "Let go of what? My passion? My career? You're destroying everything I care about." "Sometimes destruction is needed for renewal," he said, still infuriatingly calm. Calm was the last thing I felt. Breathing heavily, I decided I couldn't reason with him. I walked out, slamming the door behind me. It was time to call Marissa. At the coffee shop, I met Marissa, who instantly saw the desperation on my face. "Jenna, what's going on?" "Tyler's gone completely off the deep end. He's thrown out nearly everything I own," I said, barely holding back tears. She reached across the table and took my hand. "That's it. We're doing something about this." "But what can we do? He doesn't listen to reason." Marissa thought for a moment. "Document everything. Photograph, record, build evidence. Then we'll figure out how to hit him where it hurts." "How do I even start?" "Start with whatever he throws out next," she said firmly, "and don't let him see you do it." The plan was bold, but I felt a spark of hope. "All right, I'll do it." Returning home, Tyler eyed me with suspicion. "Where did you go?" "Just needed some air," I muttered, avoiding his gaze. Over the next few days, I carefully documented everything he discarded. The photographs, the videos, hidden carefully in places he wouldn't find. I made sure to keep a record of how his actions disrupted every facet of my life. Meanwhile, Tyler continued his rampage, unknowingly walking into my trap. The breaking point came one evening when I discovered him holding my mother's jewelry box. "No," I screamed, lunging towards him. "Not that, Tyler. Please, not that." He looked at me, eyes cold. It's just stuff, Jenna. That's my mother's, Tyler. It's all I have left of her, I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. His expression didn't change. You need to learn to let go. That's it, Tyler. If you toss that, we're done. Do you hear me? Done, I shouted, my voice echoing off the bare walls. Marissa entered the scene, a fierce look on her face. Tyler, stop, she commanded. Throw that out, and you'll regret it. He hesitated, then smirked. Too late for that, he said, tossing the box into the garbage bin. My heart shattered. The final, irrevocable act. I looked at Marissa, who nodded. It was time for the next phase of our plan. I walked away, finalizing my resolve. Now it was my turn to teach Tyler a lesson he'd never forget. I stared at the garbage bin, the final resting place of my mother's jewelry. The pain was overwhelming, but it solidified my resolve. I needed an escape, a real plan for my future without Tyler. That evening, I met up with Marissa in her cozy, cluttered apartment. It was a sharp contrast to my now barren home. I can't live like this anymore, I said, my voice shaky. Marissa nodded. I know. I've been thinking, Jenna. You need a plan. What kind of plan? I asked, sipping the coffee she handed me. First, you need to make him think you've accepted his lifestyle. Stop fighting him. Let him believe you're on his side. Meanwhile, prepare your exit strategy. Exit strategy? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes. Document everything, keep a record, and start putting away money quietly. You'll need it for when you leave. I took a deep breath. All right, I'll do it. The next day, I began pretending to go along with Tyler's minimalist fantasy. You're right, Tyler, I said over dinner. Maybe we do need less stuff. He looked pleased, almost smug. I knew you'd see it my way, Jenna. Meanwhile, I documented every unsupportable action, every violation of my privacy, every discarded belonging. I used my hidden savings to consult a lawyer, making sure I knew my rights. Weeks went by and Tyler sold off even more of our things under the guise of making our lives better. I put the couch up online, he said one evening as I returned from Marissa's. The couch? I asked, trying to mask my growing irritation. Yeah, we can get a couple of chairs instead. Less is more, right? He said with a condescending smile. Less is more, I echoed, forcing a smile. Inside, my resolve solidified. Around the same time, I noticed Tyler making plans to sell more of my beloved art supplies and personal items. Thinking of listing some more of your paints, he said offhandedly one morning. With a mental note, I added this to my growing pile of evidence. My secret revenge was close, and I felt a surge of confidence. Each day I felt stronger, more in control, knowing Tyler's arrogance would soon come crashing down. Tyler was oblivious, flush with arrogance. He didn't notice my growing distance, the way I no longer argued. He didn't notice me strategically placing cameras and taking notes. His confidence was his blindfold, and I used it to my advantage. One night, he came into the living room holding a box of my old letters and cards. Do we really need to keep these old things? He asked, not even waiting for an answer before heading to the trash bin. Go ahead, I said casually, hiding the pain. Inside, I reminded myself this was temporary. This destruction would end soon. Marissa and I met regularly, meticulously planning every step. He thinks you're on board, she said during one of our meetings. This is good. Keep it up. I will, I promised, determination pulsing through me. Tyler's arrogance made it easy. He continued his rampage, assuming I was finally seeing the wisdom of his ways. But every step he took to simplify our lives pushed him further into his downfall. My documentations grew, painting a picture of his complete disregard for me and everything we built together. The countdown had begun. Every discarded item, every condescending smile, every moment of arrogance fed into the plan. I was ready. He was unknowingly forging the path to his own ruin, and soon, very soon, he would face the consequences of underestimating me. I took a deep breath, knowing that my revenge was inching closer. Tyler's world would implode, and from the wreckage, I'd rise stronger than ever. Every morning felt like a new opportunity to gather more evidence. I stealthily cataloged Tyler's increasingly outrageous actions, frequently pausing my routine to photograph or record him. The house was no longer a home, but a battleground I had mapped out meticulously. One afternoon, Tyler came home, elated. Jenna, guess what? He announced, grinning as if he just won the lottery. What is it? I asked, feigning interest. I sold the car, took it straight to the junkyard, he said proudly. I felt a surge of anger but masked it with a smile. Really? And how are we supposed to get around now? Oh, we can make do. Use public transport. Walk. It's better for the environment, he said smugly. Inside, I was seething. The car had been another line crossed, another proof of his disregard. I secretly recorded his announcement, adding it to my growing collection of evidence. My escape fund was steadily growing, and the pieces of my plan were falling into place. Marissa and I sat down that evening, going through the documentation. You're doing great, Jenna. Just a bit longer, and you'll have all you need, she encouraged. I just need to stay focused, I replied, determination in my voice. Later, Tyler continued his spree by selling off more of the furniture. We can live a simple life with the essentials, he said, pretending to be wise. I've got some buyers for the dining table and chairs. Anger simmered, but I nodded, playing my part. I suppose you're right. Less is more. Over the next few days, Tyler's arrogance peaked. He never asked, never second-guessed his decisions, always convinced of his righteousness. He even proudly shared his minimalist philosophy with our friends, receiving mixed reactions. You're ruining Jenna's life, Marissa snapped at one such gathering. This isn't minimalism, it's madness. Tyler only chuckled. You'll understand eventually. Jenna, tell them how much better things are now. I forced a smile. It's a big adjustment, but I'm starting to see the benefits. In reality, each declaration solidified my resolve. His downfall would be both swift and brutal. My lawyer had prepared everything for the divorce, ensuring my financial security and protection. I discussed final preparations with Marissa, fine-tuning the public revelation of Tyler's actions. One night, Marissa and I set up hidden cameras throughout the house, positioning them to capture Tyler's every arrogant move. We ensured they were discreet, undetectable. Tyler, none the wiser, continued his tirade unchecked. The final straw came when Tyler decided to sell my laptop, the one lifeline to my work. It's a distraction, he argued, keeping you tied to the old ways. I listed my rejection in silent screams, recording him listing it online. Sure, Tyler, go ahead, I managed weakly, inside burning with fury. Marissa met me outside that night. Tomorrow, Jenna. We release the footage tomorrow. I nodded, a mix of anxiety and anticipation churning within. I'm ready. The next morning, Tyler beamed with unearned pride. I've arranged for the final pickup. Soon we'll be truly free. I smiled, hiding my true feelings. The footage would go live today. I pressed the button, releasing the carefully edited clips of Tyler's increasingly erratic behavior online. Within hours, our little suburban nightmare started to spread like wildfire. Calls started pouring in. Tyler's phone buzzed nonstop. Confused and frustrated, he turned to me. What's happening? You're finally facing the consequences, Tyler, I said, watching his expression shift from confusion to horror. Our life as he knew it was about to implode, and I felt a sense of justice finally taking form. I had steps to take, legal papers to file, a future to reclaim. What came next was his downfall, a consequence he never saw coming. Tyler's phone buzzed incessantly as the footage circulated online. He looked bewildered, flipping through calls and messages. The smirk that had become a permanent fixture on his face was gone, replaced by a taut scowl. What is happening, Jenna? Tyler snapped, eyes narrowing. I met his gaze, feeling a wave of satisfaction. The world is seeing your minimalist lifestyle for what it really is, Tyler. Confusion turned to rage. You did this? You filmed me? You left me no choice. You've dismantled my life piece by piece, I said calmly. Now everyone knows. He stormed into the living room, flipping through the channels. Every news segment, every website showed his face, his actions, our story. His drastic measures narrated with clips of his irrational behavior for all to see. You're ruining me, he yelled, grabbing the remote with a white-knuckled grip. No, Tyler, you ruined yourself. I just exposed the truth, I replied, feeling a rush of long-overdue empowerment. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Marissa. She looked at Tyler, then back at me. It's spreading everywhere, Jenna. His actions, his words, it's all out in the open. Tyler lunged toward her, rage emanating from him. You're in on this, too? Marissa stood her ground. You deserve every bit of this, Tyler. No one should have to live under your tyranny. Tyler's phone buzzed with a new notification, and his face paled as he read. I just lost my promotion. They don't want someone with mental instability at the helm. You brought this on yourself, I said, feeling a mix of justice and relief. In a fit of anger, Tyler threw his phone across the room, shattering it against the wall. "You've torn everything apart." "No, Tyler, you did," I said coldly. "And now it's time I move on." Marissa handed me an envelope, heavy with legal papers. "You might want to read these, Tyler." He ripped it open, the furious look on his face turning to shock as he read through the divorce papers. "Divorce? You're divorcing me?" "You gave me no other option," I said, my voice steady. "This isn't over," he screamed, his face contorted with fury. "Oh, it's over," Marissa countered. "You have nothing left to control." Tyler slumped onto the debris of our once cozy living room. "Where will you go?" he asked, voice tinged with desperation. "Wherever I choose," I replied, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. And for the first time in a long time, I'll be free. With that, I walked out the door, Marissa by my side. Tyler's life had shattered into pieces he could never fix. His public persona was tainted, his career in shambles. What once felt like a life trapped in shadows now felt open, filled with possibilities and light. Marissa and I walked towards the future. Tyler's pleas echoed faintly behind us, but I didn't look back. The home I once loved became symbolic of his downfall, a testament to the strength I discovered within myself. "You did it," Marissa said, giving my hand a squeeze. "We did it," I corrected, grateful for her unwavering support. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like my own. One filled with opportunities that no amount of Tyler's tyranny could ever take away. Tyler's pleas faded as Marissa and I walked away from the house. For the first time in ages, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. But the feeling was mixed with a sobering awareness of the path ahead. The next few days were a whirlwind. I had legal meetings, packed the few possessions Tyler hadn't managed to sell, and started building my new life. Tyler, on the other hand, was unraveling. I received messages from mutual friends, all detailing the chaos. "He's not doing well," one said. "He's a mess," added another. While part of me felt satisfaction, another part expected it. One evening, as I was settling into Marissa's spare room, my phone buzzed. Tyler's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Jenna," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry. Please come back. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix, Tyler. This is the consequence of your actions," I replied firmly. "I've lost everything, my job, my reputation. You've taken it all away." "No, Tyler, you did this to yourself. Maybe it's time you face that." He was silent for a moment. "Is there really no way back?" "No, Tyler, there isn't," I said, feeling a strange mix of pity and resolve. "Goodbye." I hung up, feeling a sense of closure. Tyler was a chapter I was ready to close. The focus was now on rebuilding. A week later, I received a call from an old client. "Jenna, we heard about what happened. We want to help you get back on your feet. Are you interested in a new project?" Excitement fluttered in my chest. "Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity." I plunged into work, rediscovering my passion for graphic design. With Marissa's support, I also started rekindling connections with old clients and colleagues. Slowly, my professional life began to flourish. Meanwhile, Tyler's situation continued to deteriorate. Friends sent updates. "He's lost the house," one messaged. "He's staying with his brother now." Another informed. Tyler was experiencing the full brunt of the consequences he had set in motion. I focused on my new beginning. Months passed, and I moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine, filled with things I chose. No one would ever dictate my peace again. One afternoon, as I worked on a new project, a familiar number flashed on my phone. Tyler's brother, Dan. "Jenna, can you talk?" Dan asked, sounding weary. "Sure, Dan. What's going on?" I replied cautiously. "It's Tyler. He's hit rock bottom. He needs help." I sighed, a part of me still feeling a pang of old familiarity. "What kind of help?" "He needs to understand what he did. He's talking to a therapist, but hearing it from you might help." I considered it. "I'll think about it, Dan, but right now I need to focus on my own healing." "Of course. Just thought you should know," Dan said before hanging up. Setting the phone down, I took a deep breath. Tyler's spiral was no longer my concern. I had a fresh canvas in front of me, both in my work and my life. Marissa and I celebrated my first big project post-Tyler. Over drinks, she looked at me and smiled. "You did it, Jenna. You got your life back." "And I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, gratitude filling my voice. We toasted to new beginnings, to resilience, to the strength it took to reclaim my life. Tyler's downfall was complete, but my journey was just beginning. And with every step, I felt more and more like the person I was always meant to be. The divorce was finalized without much more drama. The emotional weight lifted with the final signatures, and I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. I moved into my new apartment downtown. It was small, but filled with everything I loved. The walls adorned with art, the shelves stacked with books, and a cozy workspace for my graphic design projects. It was my sanctuary. On my first night alone, Marissa came over with a bottle of champagne. "Here's to new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking glasses. We laughed and talked until the early hours, the future feeling bright and promising. The next few weeks flew by. I dove into my work, reconnecting with old clients and gaining new ones. The satisfaction of rebuilding my career brought a sense of accomplishment. Each new project became a testament to my resilience. One afternoon, I received a call from Olivia Lane, Marissa's sister. "Jenna, I have a client who needs a top-notch graphic designer. Are you free to discuss?" "Absolutely," I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and gratitude. This connection could open doors I hadn't even considered. Meeting Olivia's client went better than I imagined. They were impressed with my portfolio and enthusiasm. Landing the project felt like validation for everything I endured and overcame. A new chapter was unfolding, and I was ready for it. Meanwhile, I've heard sporadic updates about Tyler. Mutual friends mentioned he was still struggling, his life dismantled, much like what he had done to mine. He moved in with his brother, barely scraping by. He reached out a few more times, apologies intermixed with pleading, but I kept my distance. The door to that part of my life was permanently closed. During a dinner with Marissa, she looked at me with a smile. "You know, you're glowing." I laughed. "Am I? I guess it's the new freedom, the chance to build my life the way I want." "You deserve every bit of happiness," she said, raising her glass again. "To us," I said, taking a sip. Life continued to improve. I settled into a new routine, balancing work and personal time, reconnecting with old friends, indulging in hobbies I had abandoned, art, reading, even taking a new dance class. One afternoon, while sketching at a local park, I ran into an old colleague. "Jenna, is that you?" I looked up, smiling. "It is. How have you been?" Catching up felt nostalgic and refreshing. We talked about future collaborations, sharing ideas and possibilities. My network grew, bringing new opportunities and collaborations. Despite everything, Tyler's shadow lingered. He was a lesson, a reminder of what could happen when one person tries to dominate another. But instead of anger, I felt a strange sense of pity. He had lost everything through his own actions and was now paying the price. One morning, I received a package. Inside was the jewelry box Tyler had thrown out, carefully restored. No note, but I knew it was from Marissa. Tears welled up as I held it, feeling a closure I didn't know I needed. That weekend, Marissa and I went out to celebrate. We danced, laughed, and wondered about the future. The weight had lifted, replaced by hope and excitement. Standing on my apartment balcony that night, looking out at the city lights, I felt a deep sense of peace. Life had thrown curveballs, but I had come out stronger. Revenge wasn't sweet, but justice. Finding my voice and reclaiming my life, that was the real victory. As I prepared for bed, I glanced at a small mirror by my bedside. The reflection showed not just someone who survived, but someone who thrived, someone who embraced every new day with gratitude and a sense of purpose. Tomorrow was another chance to build, to create, to live fully, and I was ready for it.
I am Mia. I'm 38 years old. I had to relearn a lot of things in my life during the past 2 months, which has been difficult for me. My spouse, Willie, was mostly to blame for the challenges I encountered, but happily, someone kind intervened to prevent me from going through more hardship. Permit me to introduce you to the persons that have shared my trip. Lori, my sister, comes first. She's remarkably attractive and 5 years younger than me. Since I was the stereotypical nerd, and she was the life of the party, we had a lot of arguments when we were younger. She used to make fun of me, and it felt like jealousy underneath all of it. To little effect, our mother attempted to heal the rift between us. Our correspondence decreased after I left for college, but as I grew older, and Lori got into her late teens, we started to get back in touch. Our relationship never really got close, although it did become better with time. In spite of this, I learned to embrace the degree of intimacy we were able to reach. Speaking of my ex-husband Willie, we hit it off right away when we first met at work. We made the decision to get married after 4 years of dating. We bought our first home together. The mortgage and the house deed were in my name because I was the one with a larger income. After we were married for a few years, Willie brought up the subject of having children. He took a cautious approach, hoping I would remain receptive. Willie started, "Honey, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we thought about having a family of our own. We've been together for a while now." I anticipated this discussion. I answered, "Willie, you know my reservations." He gave a nod. "I get it, but give it some thought. We are steady, and it may be amazing to see a variety of us in the wild." I exhaled. "Yes, but there's a lot of work and responsibility involved in raising children." Willie grinned. "And who is more responsible and industrious than us?" This succinct synopsis encapsulates the core of my current circumstances and the individuals who have contributed significantly to them. Even though I wasn't sure I wanted to have children, I couldn't help but comply with Willie's insistence. 4 years after we initially welcomed a son into our family, we then welcomed a girl. Willie was a helpful spouse at first, but things quickly changed around that. All of a sudden, I was responsible for our children's upbringing and our entire household. Willie's work took off after the birth of our first kid. He got promoted, and he started to out-earn me. In order to prioritize our family, he advised that I quit my work. Despite my initial reluctance, I eventually gave in to the constant pressure and adapted to my new full-time parental duty. I began throwing dinner parties to ward off boredom and keep a link to the outside world. These get-togethers, which frequently included my mother, sister Lori, and my mother-in-law Amanda, especially when she was visiting, became a treasured part of my daily schedule. There were consolation in this new chapter of my life. I loved having my family visit and spending more time with my kids. Despite the profound scars from a horrific second child birth that affected our relationship, my relationship with Willie appeared steady. But just when I believed I had settled in, a startling revelation rocked my foundation. I once discovered a pair of women's pants that I knew were not mine when cleaning out our bedroom. My heart fell as I saw them, feeling both shocked and saddened. Had I grown too little for Willie? The timing was especially hurtful because I was still recovering. Not even a year had passed from the birth of our second child and was seeing a therapist to address my postpartum issues. Though they were making modest progress, it seemed like a huge setback, one that left them feeling both betrayed and angry at Willie for perhaps being unfaithful. I required clarification. I took a picture of the pants and emailed it to Willie, requesting a response. I then went to his laptop and used his credentials to browse through his messages on social media. Upon initial observation, nothing seemed unusual. No strange names appeared, which only heightened my bewilderment and mistrust. Excitement mounted as I dug more into his digital life, wondering what else I may uncover. I went through all of Willie's conversations in a desperate attempt to find something, even though I knew deep down that it was implausible. At first, though, I wasn't concerned when my sister Lori's contact ID kept coming up in his chats, because I recognized some of the names that appeared. Why would it be the case? The communication between my spouse and sister shouldn't automatically cause suspicion. However, I followed my instinct and dug a little more, and what I found shocked me. Their messages were replete with declarations of love, sweet films, and private pictures. They even talked about Willie's departure from me. My stomach turned at the shock of my sister's betrayal. Although there were ups and downs in our relationship, I never thought she would harm me to this extent. I tried to approach Willie since I was so sick with hatred and betrayal, but he didn't answer, so I called Lori instead. With a nonchalant response, "Hey, what's up?" "Don't ask me. What's up, Lori? What's wrong with you, really?" My voice quivered with incredulity and rage. She answered incoherently, "I don't know what you mean." "Well, in my bedroom, I discovered a pair of your pants. Have you and Willie been having sex?" I broke into a laugh as I said the words. Her reply was very casual. "Yes, for some time now." "Really, Lori? You believed that sleeping with my spouse was acceptable. Did you find me uninteresting and didn't think twice about being my sister?" She was prepared with an odd explanation. "Look, I believed I was assisting you. Willie was occupied by me so you could concentrate on the children. I couldn't believe what I was hearing." "Are you serious? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you help tear our family apart?" "I just want what's best for Willie," she said. "Okay, if I'm the best for him, then so be it." Her words were like a slap in the face. "You're disgusting," I spat out and hung up, unable to fathom her audacity. Alone and devastated, I lay in bed, tears streaming down my face as I grappled with the magnitude of the betrayal from the people closest to me. I never imagined my life would unravel like this. As I dealt with the fallout of my discovery, I had to push my emotions aside. My youngest daughter needed me. She woke up crying that night, and as I comforted her, I felt numb, mechanically moving through our routines without really being present. Throughout the day, I kept my distress hidden from my children. They didn't need to carry the weight of adult problems. I picked up my older child from school, prepared dinner, and answered their innocent questions about their dad's whereabouts with a fabricated story of him working late. As the evening wore on, my initial anger shifted to concern. It was nearing 10 p.m., and there was still no sign of Willie. I called him repeatedly, but he didn't answer. Desperation led me to dial my sister, but she too remained unreachable. Exhausted and overwhelmed, I finally fell asleep, clinging to a sliver of hope that this was all just a nightmare. Morning brought a harsh reality. Willie's absence was glaringly obvious. His belongings were missing from our bedroom. A quick check confirmed my worst fears. Most of his things were gone from our home. He had left in the night without a word, without any attempt at closure. Stunned and heartbroken, I knew I had to prioritize my children. I got them ready, dropped the eldest off at school, and took my youngest to my mother's house. My mom immediately sensed that something was amiss given my distant demeanor. I struggled to keep up the facade as the morning progressed. The thought of raising 2 children on my own loomed large, and every time I snapped back to reality, the enormity of the situation weighed heavily on me. Eventually, my mother's patience wore thin. "Okay, I've had enough of your silence. What's going on?" she pressed. Gathering my courage, I started from where it all began. "Well, I found out Willie has been cheating on me." Her shock was palpable. "What? How do you know?" I sighed, the words heavy on my tongue. "I found another woman's underwear in our bedroom." As I recounted the details, the conversation opened a floodgate of emotions I'd been holding back, marking the start of a new uncertain chapter. When I confronted Willie about the unfamiliar underwear, he didn't respond, and then he just left. "He left? What do you mean?" my mom asked, bewildered. When I woke up this morning, all his things were gone, I explained. The disbelief was still fresh. I didn't even have a chance to stop him. I fell asleep around midnight, and when I woke up, he had taken everything. Oh my God, my poor girl. I'm so sorry this happened, my mom exclaimed, her voice filled with sorrow. It gets worse, I continued, hesitating as I prepared to reveal the full extent of the betrayal. Oh no, what happened? Do you know who Willie cheated on you with? She asked, a sense of urgency in her voice. You mean, do you know who he cheated with? I corrected gently. Yeah, I snooped through his things to find out. I normally wouldn't invade someone's privacy like this, but I had to know. So who is it? She inquired anxiously. It's Lori, I said, the words tasting bitter as they left my mouth. Excuse me? What? Are you serious? She gasped, shock painting her features. Yes, my sister. I called her to ask about it, and she was so casual about it. I continued, my voice shaky. She said they were in love and believed she was the best for him, so she was going to keep being with him. Oh my God, what has Lori done? My mom lamented, shaking her head in disbelief. I don't even know how you're going to get through this. You have 2 kids to raise, and now you need to find a job too. Look, why don't we just get some rest while I try to process this? I'll be here to help you, okay? She offered, her tone reassuring. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mom, I agreed, feeling a bit relieved to have her support despite the chaos. Telling my mom wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I ended up sleeping while she took care of my youngest. When I woke up, I heard my baby crying and my mom yelling. I rushed out and saw her on the phone looking angry. She hung up and seemed surprised to see me. I'm sorry about the noise, she apologized, but didn't elaborate further. I knew she had been giving Lori a piece of her mind. Over the next few days, Mom stayed with us. It was easier to manage with one person moving in rather than 3. Lori kept trying to contact our mom, but she asked me to block Lori on her behalf. It was comforting to have someone who understood my feelings and stood by my side through this turmoil. During a particularly lonely period, I learned from mutual friends that Willie and Lori had hastily married. The news broke just a day after Willie had deserted us. Our friends, concerned and puzzled by the sudden developments, reached out, sharing the details of the betrayal. It was humiliating, but their response brought some solace. They supported me wholeheartedly, choosing to cut ties with both Willie and Lori. It was painful to digest the fact that they had moved on so quickly, but perhaps I shouldn't have expected anything less given their previous actions. When I relayed this to my mom, her fury was palpable. Normally a pillar of calm, seeing her so incensed by my sister's actions underscored the gravity of the betrayal. It was comforting, however, to have her unwavering support, not just emotionally but financially as well. She went above and beyond, assisting me in securing job interviews to help regain my financial independence now that Willie was no longer there to hinder my career. Managing day-to-day life with the kids was challenging but feasible. The hardest part was masking my sorrow when they inquired about their father. Despite the struggle, we persevered. About a week after Willie's departure, I received a letter from him. By then, my heart had hardened enough that I wanted nothing to do with his words, presumed apologies, or excuses. A week was far too long for him to reach out, especially after such a profound abandonment. In a moment of resolute anger, I burned the letter, a symbolic gesture of closing that chapter of my life. However, in quieter moments, curiosity gnawed at me. Part of me regretted not reading his words. wondering if there was any explanation that could make sense of the chaos he'd left behind. Sometimes I wished I had read the letter before consigning it to the flames, if only to know what he had attempted to say. Yet the decision was made, and I had to live with not knowing, focusing instead on rebuilding and moving forward for the sake of my children and myself. Amidst the turmoil, I often had to remind myself that nothing Willie could have written in that letter would alter my feelings toward him or undo the damage he caused. The next day, to lift our spirits, my mom and I took the kids to the fair. It was refreshing to immerse ourselves in the lively atmosphere, allowing ourselves to enjoy the moment and laugh. A welcome reprieve from the recent hardships. That evening, as we relaxed with a bottle of wine, I mentioned the letter to my mom. "Something came in the mail for me last night," I began. "Oh, what was it?" she inquired. Her curiosity piqued. "It was a letter from Willie," I replied. "What did it say?" she asked, expecting that I had read it. "I don't know. I didn't open it," I confessed. "You didn't open it? But why not?" "I just didn't want to deal with anything he had to say, so I burned it," I explained, perhaps more casually than I felt. "You burned it, Mia? What if it was something important, like divorce papers?" "The envelope didn't look official at all. I'm pretty sure it wasn't that," I reassured her. "Well, if you're sure, what do you think was in it?" she pondered aloud. "Maybe a weak apology, or perhaps he wanted his stuff back. I wouldn't be surprised," I speculated, trying to dismiss the nagging thoughts about its contents. "But how are you feeling about all of this now?" She shifted the focus back to my well-being. "Today was a good day. It's tough, especially when the kids keep asking about their dad. What do I even tell them?" I admitted, the weight of the situation momentarily clouding the day's joy. "It's slowly getting better, but only a little," I added. "As long as it's improving, I'm always here for you. And just so you know, I'm planning to cut ties with your sister. Everything I have will go to you and the kids," she stated firmly. "Oh, Mom, that means a lot. But are you sure? Lori is still your daughter," I reminded her, recognizing the magnitude of her decision. "I know you and Lori had your differences, but what she did is unforgivable. I raised both of you better than this, and Lori didn't care," she said resolutely. "She's no longer my daughter in my eyes." It was a harsh stance, and while I understood her position, I knew how difficult it must have been for her to arrive at this decision. Lori was still her child, and disowning one's child is a heart-wrenching choice to make. I felt a mix of gratitude and sadness, knowing the depth of my mother's support and the painful sacrifices it entailed. The thought of ever disowning my own children was unimaginable, and it only made me appreciate my mom's support even more. She was willing to make such a difficult decision for my sake, which filled me with gratitude. 5 days later, a sudden knock on my door interrupted the quiet routine I had settled into. I wasn't expecting anyone, and with my mom at work, visitors were a rarity. With caution, I opened the door just a crack to see 2 men dressed in black suits standing on my porch. "Can I help you?" I asked, peering out. "We are lawyers, and we have something for you," one of them replied, extending a note and then a check towards me. I cautiously accepted both, my eyes widening as I glanced at the check. It was made out to me for $920,000. Stunned, I stammered, "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," they assured me, urging me to read the note. The note began with the words, "Thank you for saving me." As I read further, I discovered it was from Amanda, my mother-in-law. She had tried to visit 5 days prior, but found no one at home. When she called Willie, he implied that he couldn't access the house because I had changed the locks. Sensing that something was off, Amanda pressed Willie until he confessed everything. Appalled by her son's behavior, Amanda decided to write me and her grandchildren into her will. In her note, she expressed her gratitude for my actions, which prevented her from entrusting her assets to Willie. She had been terminally ill and unfortunately passed away just the day before. Her final wish was to ensure that her daughter-in-law and grandchildren were well looked after. Tears streamed down my face as I absorbed the contents of the note. Amanda's unexpected kindness and the profound loss of such a supportive figure overwhelmed me. It was a bittersweet moment, realizing the extent of her faith in me and the magnitude of her final gesture. Amanda was an exceptional woman, known for her integrity and fearless spirit. This trait often put Willie on edge, but to me, it was a source of immense comfort. She remained steadfast, offering her unwavering support right until the end. Willie called shortly after Amanda passed away. Though I was prepared for a reconciliation attempt, I still opted to listen. "What's this all about?" he blurted out, wasting no time. "You ought to be more precise," I shot back, keeping my composure. When I asked, "Why weren't you at the house?" "I wrote you a note telling you to behave properly while my mom is here." "Yeah, the letter mentioned that." I said, "I never read it." "You torched it? It's all wrecked by you. Mom was supposed to help with her estate, but you've taken everything for yourself," he charged harshly. "Willie, that is incredibly hypocritical. You moved away from us and are now only contacting us financially. Luck isn't something you can influence. By shielding us, it's obvious that both your mother and I behaved in our own best interests." I replied, "Please don't contact me or the kids again," hanging up the phone with a strong sense of resolve. After that discussion, I acted quickly to get our separation approved. The divorce process proceeded smoothly, with me being granted exclusive custody of our children. Willie tried to contest Amanda's will in the hopes of securing a share of the bequest, but her documents blatantly favored me, so he was unable to succeed. Willie and Lori persisted in their attempts to get me to give in and share the fortune, but I refused to budge. Because of the inheritance's financial stability, I was able to set aside money for my kids' future education and make prudent investments to keep our family stable. This also made it possible for my mother to retire in comfort, and as the kids adapted to life without their father, I went back to work. When they're old enough to comprehend, I'll tell them the entire tale. Even if the events that transpired are still painful, I have hope for the future. Better times are definitely coming, and the future seems promising.